Welcome to this podcast on digital responsibility. There's a vibrant community across the world at the moment driving forward corporate digital responsibility, which includes a range of aspects from digital ethics, digital for the environment, sustainability, digital well-being, inclusion, accessibility, and more. My name is Rob Price, one of the founders of Corporate Digital Responsibility back in 2017. If you'd like to know more, have a look at the website corporatedigitalresponsibility.net. I'd like to introduce Christopher Joynson, fellow co-founder of Corporate Digital Responsibility, to host this episode.
Welcome everyone to the 8th episode of the Corporate Digital Responsibility podcast. Today we're going to be talking about teenage inclusion in the digital world, and more broadly, the digital divide in our society. I'm delighted to be joined by Elliot and Mishal. Elliot, would you like to start first by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Elliot Doak, and I am a software developer for Atos, who's a IT services company. I recently just took part in Atos's internal public speaking competition, and I won it. And that's how I really got interested in the digital divide, because I based my talk around that. I found it really fascinating. I've spent the last year constantly going over different angles of it, learning more about it, and it's something that I've become quite passionate about, and I find very interesting to talk about. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mishal?
Thanks, Chris. So my name's Mishal, and I'm a management consultant at Alchemy Consulting. I'm here because I have a really strong passion for diversity and inclusion, helping people overcome the boundaries that are set for them based on how they're born and what their circumstances are. And I have a really strong passion in ESG as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're fortunate we all share that passion on this call. And it's a core fundamental of what corporate digital responsibility is all about and what it's trying to achieve in the coming years. So I'm excited about our conversation today. So Elliot, maybe we could start by you introducing the topic of your talk and give us an idea of what you presented at the event. Congratulations on winning, by the way.
Thank you very much.
It'd be great to learn more about what you talked to your audience about.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. So yes, the competition is a public speaking competition, and every year they have a question. And this year's question was, are we living in a post-digital world? Now, the contestants can take that and go any way they like with it. We had some amazing talks from everything ranging from AI and determining its bias, racial bias, into user experience, into gender inequality. There was lots of different things. And what immediately became apparent to me when I thought of the question was no. It wasn't really, straight away it just hit me, almost it felt a bit self-involved, because of course I might think that because I have no issues in any sort of digital disinclusion, but I immediately thought of all the people that probably do. So instantly I just thought, that can't, surely not, we can't be. So the more I looked into it, the more I came across the digital divide and seen the whole spectrum. Because it's to say digital divide is almost like, it's just a nutshell. There's so many different demographics in society who had impacted it in totally different ways. I personally chose to speak about the kind of teenage demographic, those going through high school, where it's critical to their learning to be online, to have devices, especially during the pandemic that we're in right now. It's more prevalent than ever. So that's what really I based my talk around. And I really wanted to challenge people's perspectives on that, because a lot of people that work for tech companies, very rarely do they have issues with the digital divide. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And it almost was reminiscent of when you see photos of, say, male politicians all in a room discussing women's healthcare, or when someone's discussing the issue that isn't there. And we could be at this event, although it wasn't in person this year, and we could be discussing how we are in a post-digital world, when the voices that would disagree with us aren't being represented. So I found it very important that that be brought up to say, hey, maybe we should consider everyone, not just our own echo chamber of digitally literate people.
Fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. I use that phrase echo chamber there, and we are often at fault of speaking to people that naturally agree with our opinion, and that's how we form these networks online. I think that digital divide topic, I was interested to ask you actually, what do you think digital divide means to you in this context? Is it a kind of definition of the term? And because I know it can be one of accessibility for technology, but also one of kind of willingness and ability to utilize it as well.
Yeah, for me personally, I don't see the digital divide as a checkbox, as yes or no. I definitely, like most things, and I mentioned earlier, I see it as a spectrum, which might sound like a cop-out answer, but you can be affected by the digital divide in so many different ways. For example, even if you have now been given a laptop, say the government can give you a laptop that you didn't have, and you have maybe some slow running Wi-Fi, when your broadband isn't the same speed as your counterparts, your laptop's glitchy, and you have 6 years previously of a lacking in picking up digital skills, you're running the race already 100 meters behind the starting point. So it's not a case of, even though you could say this kid now has a device, therefore they are now check past the digital divide, whereas in reality it's a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mishal, what are your thoughts?
So my immediate thoughts would have to be how there's a disparity caused by socioeconomic privileges and lack of privileges as well. But I also agree with Elliot in the sense that you could be financially quite well off and from an educated, wealthy background, but happen to live in an area where your infrastructure for internet is quite poor. So that would mean someone living in the suburbs or in urban areas would have much better connection than you, even though they may be more socioeconomically disadvantaged. And I think there is the obvious sense that there's many people out there in the world who either choose between rent and food or internet. And obviously it's a very difficult choice to make, but you know, this stuff happens and perhaps we're overlooking that a lot.
I think your talk did touch on the link between poverty and the digital divide in that age group.
Yeah, definitely. There is a clear trend and a clear link between income and digital access. Me personally, I've been thankful enough that I've never had to be hit by the digital divide, but I do come from an area that is plagued with it. It's an area that is your traditional working class. I mentioned in the talk, and I almost make a joke about it, that 20% of the town is covered. I show a map and I say 20% of my local town is in the top underprivileged, and then it goes down to the 5%, and it's never a good thing when you see that on a map. But I had a lot of friends at school and a lot of people at school that it wasn't something that we spoke about. It wasn't something that would be out and out. And as a teenager, you might not pick those things up, but people were definitely struggling with that. And I kind of mentioned in the talk that if I interviewed for the job I'm in just now in London, I could be walking out of the middle of London, walking about thinking, yeah, we do live in a post-digital world. But if I then go back to Clydebank, which is the town I'm from, and just meet up with old friends and young kids there still now going through school, would they honestly say yes? And my argument was that no, they wouldn't.
Absolutely, and I think to that extent, the digital divide almost becomes a symptom of and a kind of an indicator of other divides within our society. I remember seeing some of my colleagues actually presenting on LinkedIn about the huge leaps that London had made in the transport system and how you could get around with just your debit card, and how there was virtually no need for cash anymore. And yet when I travel home to Crewe, and get off the train. To catch a bus, I have to go to a cash machine, get a £10 note out, go to the local WH Smith's, buy a Mars bar, get just the right coins, because if I give them a note, they'll take the whole note and not give me any change back. Give them just enough coins to be able to get home, and that's just a different world. And this is, we're talking in the UK, by the way. Globally, of course, there's other differences in our society. So yeah, I'm not sure we're all on the same playing field sometimes in that respect.
No,
Mishal?
definitely, I agree. Like you said, we're only speaking about the UK. We've not even delved into globally, which is even a whole other issue completely.
Yeah, I found statistics saying that only 54% of the world's population is actually connected to the internet.
Wow.
Which, if you think about it, mind-boggling.
It is. It's a bit. It kind of calms down, and it goes to your point originally, Elliot, and everyone loves to talk about how wonderful and exciting the technology world is, and I'm sure everyone would expect us in our generation to come onto a call and say how amazing and exciting it is, but actually we need to address things like the digital divide and increase accessibility, education and willingness in technology if we're really going to achieve that level of equality and everything that comes with. I suppose the other element for that generation that is part of the technology world, that it has open access to social media. I have nieces now who are growing up, and there's a big question: when do they get their own device? When should they get a Facebook account? When should they get exposed to that world? And what's in store for them when they get there? You don't see many kind of intro manuals for how to get onto the world and what to trust, what not to trust, how to avoid bullying and stuff. And I think we hear at the moment that bullying is quite prevalent online now that people are in classrooms virtually rather than physically. I think these are new challenges that our social media and digital world haven't really come around to properly addressing it.
Yeah, definitely. And in itself, it almost is like its own feedback loop where they may finally get access and have those lack of digital skills, which then feeds in to the bullying because of the lack of access.
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes round and round. And like you said, it's not like kids learn these things on their own. They have to go and navigate their own way. I know there's maybe a few things that you can go on and look at and do's and don'ts, those sort of things, but it's all up to them to find it out themselves, and they're on their own in there as well.
Absolutely.
And another big one for me, actually, just on top of that, is that the misinformation online today for adults is terrifying. The amount of adults that feed into misinformation, never mind young people growing up becoming somewhat radicalized by these sort of nonsense arguments that can be put out. And as a kid, if you've not got anyone, even as an adult really, but we all know that kids are perceptible to pick up things from their favorite influencers or their favorite people, and we know a lot of these people maybe don't have the best intentions in terms of they're advertised, paid money to promote certain things, whether it's dieting, drugs, or whatever else they're using, so it's a very difficult one to kind of formulate the correct way to go about it.
Yeah, totally.
I was watching a program yesterday, coincidentally, which was discussing the COVID-19 vaccine and how misinformation has been spread so much across the internet. There's propaganda videos out there. There's 80-year-old vulnerable people who are refusing to get the vaccine because of what they've seen online. And the government is powerless to do anything about it because legislation to stop misinformation won't be coming in until the end of this year / the next year. And we're in the middle of a pandemic where obviously a vaccine would be really useful, but you can't control what's out there entirely.
Absolutely, especially when we're living on social media platforms where freedom of speech is encouraged, and you are allowed to say and express yourself quite rightly in many cases. In that world, often misinformation or insult or stereotyping or things that people shouldn't have to listen to aren't reported until someone reports them. If someone has to be insulted before any action can be taken, which is a strange system for us to be living in. It's an odd environment, and this frame of thought always leads me to, or someone needs something that manages the platform needs to be able to know what I'm saying could be considered to be insulting or racist or spreading misinformation, and prevent me from saying it, which is a bit of a strange concept.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tricky one, because this is the whole argument just now, isn't it? Freedom of speech is a slippery slope, and you have a lot of people, which sometimes I feel is used to get around. It's one of those ways people can say that they enjoy being bigots or saying what they say, and it's just an excuse to be allowed to say it, that they're getting stepped on. And it's almost this cancel culture that people refer to. You can't say anything these days. But what annoys me is when people confuse cancel culture with consequence culture. It's not that you're not being thrown in prison by the government. You're facing consequences from speaking online of a private company that doesn't meet their requirements.
Absolutely. And when my profile to the world doesn't have to be me, it could be a cartoon character and a completely made up name, it makes it very difficult to introduce consequence into that world. Fascinating. I think we've just about explored a number of worrying areas, both for that part of that generation that are new to the digital world and experiencing it for the first time, but also those that haven't yet had the access. I'm conscious of time on this podcast, so I'm interested to hear your kind of closing remarks, as it were. Elliot, any thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Definitely. I would like to say to your listeners, which I really tried to get through in my presentation that I spoke about earlier, is that I would really encourage everyone to look at your day-to-day life and how you have no issue with the digital divide. The most basic things, when you look at your smartwatch, or you check your emails, or you open your laptop to record a podcast, and you have a nice streamed picture and audio. Just look at that and imagine your day-to-day life without that access, and just have a sort of check to your own reality to say, just because I have it doesn't mean everyone has it. And if you take that mindset and you go into your job where you can influence and have the power to make changes through your company, then I think that would make a world of difference. If everyone could do that personally, the collective would make an overall difference. So I would love people to just try that for one day and see how they feel and what they learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Elliot. I completely agree. I think that's all something we need to think about more. Mishal, what's your thoughts?
So my concluding thoughts would be, I know I wouldn't have been able to achieve half of the things I've achieved if it wasn't for having an internet and access to a laptop. I will mirror Elliot's point. If you happen to be privileged enough to even have a spare laptop at home, there's dozens of initiatives out there where you can donate your laptops to young people so they can develop themselves and reach their potential. I found a really interesting statistic that just under 1 million children can't access online learning during this pandemic, and generally either. If you have the resources, do what you can to help, because these are entire lives that are shaped by the internet. And it's incredible when you think how much empowerment you get from just having a basic resource like that.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the digital divide and corporate digital responsibility more broadly helps us to recognise the new vulnerabilities that form in society when we take on all these new technologies. The people that could get left behind, the people that could be influenced by misinformation on the web. All these people that need protection and need support, and I think teenage inclusion and access to devices and connectivity is a really good example. So thank you both for your time today. It's much appreciated. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed the call. Thank you.